May good fortune and blessings come to all of you who read this short biography of this most wonderful man. For as long as you do not fall back or give up your striving in the practice which leads to Dhamma, one day you will also praise the pure treasure of Dhamma, the refuge of your heart, even as this Acharya did in his own heart. This is bound to be the case, which is in conformity with the Dhamma as being the treasure of everybody who practices it in the right way. Zami Jigamma. Chapter 13. Methods of Bhāvanā. The method of walking Jangama. The Venerable Ajaan Mun, who experienced Dhamma quite clearly in his heart, practiced in a consistent, even, and elegant manner, which can and should most certainly and wholeheartedly be called the middle way of practice, Majjhima Paṭipadā, of a bhikkhu in this present age. But I did not describe the method of walking Jangama which he used when I wrote his biography, for I forgot to explain how he did it, whether he walked in any special direction or not, how long the path should be for walking Jangama, and before starting to walk Jangama, were there any preliminary practices which he used. Therefore we shall now make good this omission and explain all these things in this book, so that those readers who are interested enough may take them as the basis of their practice in the future. Truly speaking, Dhamma and Vinaya are the basic pattern of the middle way of practice for those who are interested enough to follow and practice them rightly and fully, and these are already available. Because of this, Venerable Ajaan Mun used to set them up as the guiding pattern for what he did in a faultless manner, both in his ordinary activities and in the various forms of meditation practice which he used. But we will explain his method of walking Jangama before any others. Firstly, the direction by the compass in which the Jangama path is made and its length are as follows. Venerable Ajaan Mun determined that the direction of the Jangama path should be east-west, but it may vary from this between northeast-southwest to southeast-northwest, although it should be made within these limits, and he always maintained this practice. The length of the path will depend on what is suitable. He did not give any fixed ruling on this, and one must consider for oneself what is reasonable. Normally it should be about 20 paces long, although there is no fixed limit. He also said that it should not be less than 10 paces long, for those occasions when one cannot find any place longer and more suitable, though generally speaking a path of between 20 and 30 paces is most suitable. He made a special point of keeping to the limits of direction as mentioned above, and always maintained this without deviating from it unless he had no other alternative, and he taught the bhikkhus and novices to practice in this way also. Occasionally he would see a bhikkhu walking Jangama in the wrong direction, and he would tell him off and teach him, saying, "When I teach my followers, whether in the way of Dhamma or Vinaya, I always teach according to a regular pattern without deviating from it. Even in walking Jangama, which is an aspect of Dhamma, there is a regular pattern of how it should be done which accords with Dhamma. When they walked Jangama in the time of the Lord Buddha, did they specify in what direction they should walk, or not? I have found out that they specified 3 directions, as I have often explained to you, and nobody should think that this is an insignificant thing which you have no interest in practicing and accepting. For this would show that you are only determined to train yourself in whatever interests you, and everything else you will see as being insignificant, which is how it has been with you in the past, seeing nothing as significant. Being like this is a clear indication of the insignificance of yourself, for you came here originally with a full commitment to train yourself in the whole teaching, but when you leave this place you will be bound to take this view and habit of seeing everything as insignificant along with you and to put it into practice. This will lead you to believe that there is nothing of any real significance within all those who practice the way of Dhamma, for even having to come to stay with a teacher, an acharya who you respect with faith, you still don't see any significance in his teaching and admonishment. This means that at some time you will be creating things that will lead on more and more to your own ruin. It is just this thing in those who come to follow my teaching which makes me lack confidence in them and feel doubtful whether they will attain anything of ultimate truth, sara, to act as a firm foundation for their further practice in the future. All I can see is insignificance everywhere in them. For the truth of the matter is that I have already investigated every aspect of the Dhamma which I give out to teach my followers. I have examined it and checked it over and over again until I am quite sure about it, and I don't teach things which occur to me on the spur of the moment without having considered them properly beforehand, as though they just, so to speak, slip out of my mouth. But everything I teach has been thoroughly investigated right through from its gross and obvious right up to its most subtle aspects. In determining the directions which are appropriate for walking Chankama, I have explained them many times to my followers until it has become tiresome, both to the teacher and to those who listen. But why, instead of accepting it as something to investigate and try out and prove by training yourself, do you stubbornly oppose it and then develop an attitude in which you are shameless in the face of your teacher and of the others who are living together here? In regard to doing research into the various compass directions and their suitability for striving in Dhamma in various ways, I have done this for a long time and have known about it for a long time, so I feel competent to teach my followers with complete certainty. So when I see them going against what I have taught, I can't help feeling disheartened and sorry and fearful that in the future I shall see nothing but falsehood everywhere in the monasteries and the sasana throughout, including the bhikkhus, novices, elders, nuns, and Buddhists generally, because self-will and doing these things the easy way will lead them into falsehood. It is not careful investigation and looking to see the ways of cause and effect that lead people into falsehood, for these things are what make the sasana true and blameless. But those people who practice in ways that turn the sasana into a tool of the kilesas which fill their hearts is what brings blame on the sasana. It is just this that makes me afraid, because I can see it with my own eyes, such as in this case here and in this sort of thing. I actually watched Venerable Ajaan call this bhikkhu to tell him off and teach him in this forceful manner, and I can never forget it. So when the situation is right, I bring it out and tell others about it. It is in this way that Venerable Ajaan Mun had his own particular way of walking Chankama, a valid way based on his own researches, as mentioned above. The direction for walking Chankama as defined by Venerable Ajaan Mun. In deciding on the direction for setting the path for walking Chankama, Venerable Ajaan Mun decided to look into the way of the Aryan tradition at the time of the Lord Buddha. He found out that originally there was a standard way in which they did it, so from that time on he always followed that way. As to whether one should wear the jivara, outer robe, he said that in walking Chankama one may wear it or not, depending on whatever is suitable and appropriate in the circumstances. As for the direction in which one should sight the path for walking Chankama, the method of walking, wearing the jivara or not, or what one should do just before starting to walk while standing and pondering in one's heart at the end of the Chankama path, in all these things, Venerable Ajaan Mun looked and found out how the Aryan tradition was practiced in all of its subtlety, and he set himself to practice it in the same way from then on. Thus, in walking Chankama, he taught that one should walk parallel to the mean path which the sun takes throughout the day, or between the two limits from northeast-southwest through east-west to southeast-northwest. He said that the line from the mean path of the sun is the best way, followed by the two deviations from this line. But as far as going beyond these limits, or walking on a north-south line, he was never seen to do this, and quite apart from seeing what he himself did, I in fact heard him say that one should not walk in these directions. But I have completely forgotten why this is so. The method of walking Chankama Bhāvanā. The practice of walking back and forth, which is called walking Chankama Bhāvanā, should be done neither too fast nor too slow, but in a harmonious, seemly manner, which accords with the tradition of the bhikkhus who were striving to attain Dhamma by the way of walking at the time of the Lord Buddha. This was one of the methods of making a change from the sitting posture, called sitting Bhāvanā. A further change may be made by standing still, called standing Bhāvanā. Finally, a still further change may be made lying down, called Sīlaratano Bhāvanā, in which a resolve has been made to practice Bhāvanā while lying down in the posture called Sīlaratano, the lion posture. Whichever of these methods are used, in striving to practice the way, the underlying purpose and intention is to clean out and wash away the kilesas in the same way and using the same methods in each of them without changing the tools, which means the Dhamma, that one has been using to do this job and which suit one's temperament. Before walking Jankama, one should decide on how long or short a distance one will walk, and from where to where. One may then have to get the path cleared and prepared, making it as long as one wants, before one can walk on it conveniently. In walking Jankama, one should, to start with, go to one end of the place, or the prepared path where one will walk, put one's hands together and raise them to one's forehead in puja. Then one should recollect the virtue of the Sīlaratano, the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, which one takes as the sarana, the refuge which is firmly implanted in one's heart. Then one should recollect the virtue of one's father and mother, one's upataya, preceptor, one's teacher, and all others who have been of value to oneself. Then one should reflect on the purpose of this practice which one is about to do, and how one should do it with determination to reach that purpose. After this, one should put one's hands down in front of one, the right hand over the left, just below the level of the navel, as in the images of the Buddha which depict him in contemplation, and then one should promote the 4 Brahma Viharas. Having done this, one puts one's eyes down in a modest manner, sets up mindfulness to be aware of the chitta, and that Dhamma which one usually uses as a preparatory method, Paṭipadā, to control the heart, or else one investigates the various Dhammas which one has been doing in other situations, such as sitting. Then one starts walking back and forth between the points which one has decided as the end limits of the Jankama path. Walking in a controlled manner and being mindful of that Dhamma or that thing which one is investigating the whole time, and not letting one's chitta go away from this work which one is presently doing. And one should not walk swinging one's arms, nor with one's arms behind one's back or folded across one's chest, and one should not be looking about all over the place while walking, which is the way of someone who lacks self-control. In standing still, while fixing one's attention upon and pondering or investigating that Dhamma, there is no need to take up any special position on the Jankama path, and one may stop and stand wherever one wants to, and for as long or short a time as one wishes, for it depends only upon the circumstances as to whether one should stop or go on walking again, because pondering that Dhamma may be deep, or shallow and gross, or subtle in various different ways, and one must be free to practice in whatever way is necessary until one has gained a clear understanding of it, after which one should go on walking as before. Sometimes it may be longer than 1 hour before one has become quite clear about it and can go on walking again. When walking and keeping one's attention on a parikamma, or investigating Dhamma, one should not count one's steps, unless, that is, one has taken up one's walking process as the basis aramana of one's practice, in which case one may count them if it helps. Whatever form of practice one is doing, it is most important that mindfulness, sati, should be present continually with that practice. If mindfulness is lacking in whatever work one is doing, that work cannot be considered as striving in the way of Dhamma. Anyone who does the practice should have as much interest in being mindful as he does in the Dhamma which he is using as a parikamma. If mindfulness drops away, even though one may still be doing the parikamma Bhāvanā which goes by habit, the resulting calm of heart which one intends to get will not arise as one wants it to. The length of time one spends in walking Jankama one must determine for oneself, and striving in the way of Dhamma may be done in any of the 4 postures, walking, standing, sitting, or lying down, and one may find that any one of them is the most suitable for one's own characteristics, for different people have different characteristics. Using these 4 postures at different times is not only for quelling the kilesas, but also to enable one to change one's posture. Because for the body-mind complex, the Dhatu Khandha, to be a useful tool, one must look after it. One way of doing this is to change its posture from time to time, and this keeps it fit and suitable for use in doing this work. For if one does not look after it in various ways, the body-mind complex can become an enemy to its owner. In other words, it changes and alters in various ways, until finally one cannot reach the intended purpose for which one is working. The Thutanga Bhikkhu considers the practice of walking Jankama as being a duty which is truly a fundamental part of his life, and generally he will walk an hour or more each time. After he has finished his meal in the morning, he will start walking on his Jankama path and finish about 11 or 12 o'clock, after which he will have a short rest. Between 1 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he will again start walking Cankama and go on until it is time to sweep the ground around where he is staying and to have a wash. After this, he will start walking again until 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening in the winter, but at other times he will go on until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Then he will return to his dwelling to practice Samadhi Bhāvanā. This is typical, but however it may be, they are bound to walk Jangama and to sit in Samadhi Bhāvanā for long periods of time, and to keep up this routine continually. Regardless of where they are staying, in whatever circumstances and in all seasons, they keep up their efforts to practice the way continually without letting it lapse. For to let it lapse would make them weak, and let the kilesas rove about stirring up trouble and causing a lot of disturbance and vexation for their hearts. But instead, they keep on trying to chop up the kilesas in all situations. By practicing in this way, they see some results coming from their efforts, and as they go on, they continue to see results coming steadily all the time. In the early stages, when the influence of the kilesas is still very strong, it is rather difficult, and one is quite likely to be caught by them and made to give way and lie down and go to sleep without realizing what is happening. By the time one has become conscious of oneself, the kilesas will have eaten up that which one has inside oneself until they are full. Then they are able to go on wandering all over the world through every continent before one drowsily wakes up and complains to oneself that one was carried away and dropped off to sleep for a few moments. From now on, I resolve to increase my efforts as hard as I can, but for today, drowsiness and lethargy made me go wrong. In truth, it was just his kilesas that made him go wrong, and the next time he will still not look and see what they are like, and he will be caught again. But he is not afraid of them. It is unpleasant and hurts, but he is not afraid of them. And this is how the kilesas beat him and whip him. Those who practice Bhāvanā have all been chastened and reformed by the kilesas many times, and then complained that the kilesas are still too clever, and that they were not yet able to catch up with them. This is just as it should be, for they have been the teacher, the acharya, of people and animals throughout the world since ages past. To begin with, when one first starts trying to do the practice, the kilesas become angry and try to force one to go this way or that. They try to make one feel lazy, to make one feel pains here and aches there, to make one feel sleepy and drowsy, and to make one go and look for all sorts of things to do, which cause a lot of trouble, so that one has little time for practicing Bhāvanā, or so that the chitta is so restless that one cannot practice Bhāvanā. Then they make one think that one has little merit and not much inherent ability, so that one is incapable of practicing much, and one cannot sit in Bhāvanā for any length of time. They make one think and imagine how that, if I spend too much time with my eyes closed in Bhāvanā, won't it cause me a lot of trouble and difficulty? I won't be able to keep up with the world. I won't be able to make ends meet. As if before he even did any practice of Bhāvanā, he had millions, and that if he were to start doing any Bhāvanā, this alone would swallow up all his wealth. If then he actually started to do some Bhāvanā, would not the kilesas with large bellies and wide open mouths bigger than a giant go and swallow the lot? Even when he is driven by the kilesas to think just this much, he feels irritable, painful, sore, and stiff everywhere. Finally, he gives way to them, and they lead him to loiter off in the direction where he thinks there are no fierce giants, devils, or maras. But when he returns and checks to see how much he has got in his pocket, it has all been cleaned out. What took it he does not know. He makes no complaint, for he does not yet know the thief who came and stole it, because his pocket is attached to him and he was not careless, nor did he leave it anywhere that a thief could get at it. It was just that he was cleaned out in the way that has happened before, which he is used to, without knowing anything about what happens and why. Next time he will try again, and he will be cleaned out again without being able to catch the thief. This is the path that the kilesas take. They like to do things in a high-handed way such as this, which makes it difficult for anyone to catch them. Even the Thutanga bhikkhus who have no valuable possessions can still be robbed by them, for they can steal the samadhi chitta until they are devoid of samadhi vipassana, samadhi wisdom. They have already experienced this,
So they are quick to warn all their associates and followers who are Buddhists to be watchful of themselves when they first start to take an interest in the teaching and practice of Buddhism, and are looking for Sīla, for Dhamma, and for Samadhi Bhāvanā. Afraid that the kilesas will come and steal or drag them away right before their eyes so that they can no longer make contact with them and will never have another chance to get close to them, as has happened to these bhikkhus in the past. But if they have been forewarned, they may be able to watch themselves and be careful, and not lose everything of value in themselves uselessly without anything to act as a signal and give them a warning that the kilesas are gathering all their valuables together to set about using them up so that they lose everything altogether. Those who are just beginning to train themselves should decide for themselves what times they will walk Jankama. But they should also decide to keep walking longer when the hordes of deceptive kilesas creep in to steal their possessions, so that they will still have some Bhāvanā left. When walking Jankama, one should set up mindfulness of the parikamma word or object so that they blend together as one thing, and support one's efforts with sati sampajanya, mindfulness and awareness, making the heart firmly fixed to that Dhamma which is the parikamma. The parikamma may, for example, be buddho, so that one makes the citta know and remain firmly fixed to buddho the whole time while walking back and forth. When we talk about that kind of striving, it means doing it without any breaks or pauses in between, which can happen even though one still thinks that one is practicing with striving. The result will then be a state of calm and peace, as long as the citta does not forget itself and get involved in some other emotionally bound situation to which it is attached, arammana, before one gets there. One who does the practice of Bhāvanā can for certain expect to be engulfed in happiness of heart at that time or at any other time when this happens. But before doing any training, you should understand and accept the following. The Lord Buddha and all those acharyas, teachers, who teach the true way with metta to help people, do not teach untruth or falsehood to waste people's time, which would certainly be useless. Before they had attained Dhamma which they used to teach other people, they had to fall and scramble up with hardship and torment by themselves before we who are now doing the training came along. Therefore we should not be doubtful about them, nor think that they were already washed clean and were just waiting to come out and teach without having previously made any investment of effort and hardship. The investment made by the Lord Buddha was such that he lost consciousness and fell over 3 times. And for his followers, the Sāvakas, there were some who walked until their feet bled, or who went blind, and many other forms of hardship. But as a result of this, they gained a refuge for their heart which is the highest, the ultimate, the most precious, the most exalted, the most wonderful, and beyond everything in the world, and this they gained as a reward and result of what they had lost. It was due to their intense and valiant effort that they were able to pass beyond the world, entirely free from all dangers and dukkha, and all of this was because of their readiness to renounce and let go of all those things that the world holds most dear. If they had remained deluded and jealously hung on to their possessions with anxious concern for dukkha and hardship, they would for sure still be immersed in dukkha and struggling in the mud and mire of the round of samsara, vata, like all the rest of us. Then there would be nobody in the world who was in a different state. And where could we find an example of striving that we should follow? And what method should we use to gain freedom from all those things that we ought not to desire, but which all of us have in profusion within us? We should train ourselves to think about and examine ourselves now, while we are still in this situation where we are capable of doing this. When we reach a situation where we are up against it with no way out and no way that we can wiggle free, it is no longer possible to start making merit, giving dana, guarding our moral behavior, and practicing samadhi bhavana amongst the fuel and firewood of the funeral pyre, or in the maw of the crematorium. There is nothing left but the fire which does its duty, and the body is turned to ashes and cinders. All of us have seen this sort of thing happening, and it should make us feel sorrowful, and should make a lasting impression on us. Walking Jangama and sitting in Samadhi Bhavana are ways of analyzing and searching for that which is real and essential, saraguna, within oneself. This is very important work, with results that are beyond all one's expectations and far greater than any other work that one can do. So one should not let the kilesas, dharna, and avidya play about and deceive one into seeing it as work which tricks one into loss and ruin with no good results at all. For in truth it is the kilesas themselves which do just this, and they are what always lead people and other beings to destruction and ruin if they have been deceived by their tricks and methods until they no longer think about themselves. The analysis of the citta by means of samadhi bhavana means the analysis of oneself into the various parts of which one is composed, so as to find out which is true and which is false, which leads one towards dukkha and which towards sukha, which leads to hell and which to heaven, and which leads one towards nibbana, the final and complete end of all dukkha.